Ever wonder if Elvis had limits? Did the king of rock and roll ever think a song was just too much? Number 7. There's no place like home. Could a song about home be too saccharine even for the man who gave us Love Me Tender? Apparently so. In 1957, as Elvis was reaching the peak of his early fame, songwriters pitched him There's No Place Like Home, a ballad dripping with nostalgia about returning to one's childhood home. The song featured lyrics about mother's cooking, father's easy chair, and tears of joy upon seeing the family porch swing. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, initially supported recording the track, seeing its potential appeal to Elvis's increasingly diverse audience. After all, the young rock and roller was trying to broaden his appeal beyond teenagers to include their parents. Elvis read through the lyrics during a session at Radio Resorter's studio in Hollywood. According to Scotty Moore, Elvis's longtime guitarist who was present that day, the king read through the lyrics once, smirked, and handed the sheet back to Parker. "Colonel, I just can't do this one. Folks would think I'm putting them on," Elvis reportedly said. "Even my mama would roll her eyes at this." The songwriters weren't named in Moore's account, but music historians believe the track may have been penned by the team that had previously written Old Shep, a tearjerker about a boy and his dog that Elvis did record. This rejection came during a period when Elvis was consciously trying to soften his image for mainstream America. Yet There's No Place Like Home apparently crossed a line into territory that was too maudlin, even for an artist who wasn't afraid to wear his heart on his sleeve. The song was eventually recorded by Pat Boone, whose squeaky clean image was better suited to the saccharine sentimentality of the lyrics. Boone's version reached a respectable pound 22 on the charts in late 1957, while Elvis continued his streak of hits with material that, while sometimes sentimental, maintained at least a hint of his rock and roll edge. Number 6. Tears of the Angels. Did you know Elvis once walked out of a recording session because a song made him too emotional? In 1969, fresh off his famous comeback special and riding high with renewed cultural relevance, Elvis was recording at American Sound Studio in Memphis. This productive period gave fans classics like Suspicious Minds and In the Ghetto. But one song never made it past the first take. Tears of the Angels was written by a young yoker named Martin Henley, who had connections to Elvis's inner circle. The ballad described a father watching over his sleeping child while reflecting on his own mortality and hopes for his child's future. Given that Elvis's daughter Lisa Marie was only a year old at the time, the material hit extremely close to home. Studio engineer Al Pachucki recalled the session in a 1998 interview for a music documentary. Elvis started the first verse, got about halfway through, and just stopped singing. The band kept going for a few bars before they realized something was wrong. Elvis had tears in his eyes. According to multiple accounts, Elvis simply said, "I can't do this one right now, fellas," before stepping outside for some air. When he returned 15 minutes later, he asked to move on to something else. The song was never revisited. What made this rejection particularly notable was that Elvis was no stranger to emotional material. This was the same session where he recorded In the Ghetto, after all. But Tears of the Angels apparently struck too personal a chord at a time when Elvis was navigating his new role as a father amidst his career comeback. The song's manuscript reportedly remained in Elvis's personal collection until after his death. Henley, the Nogar, never had it recorded by another artist, feeling it had been written specifically with Elvis's voice and life circumstances in mind. A demo version allegedly exists in private collections of Elvis memorabilia, though it has never been officially released. Number 5. Mother's Wedding Day. How would you feel about singing your mother's heartbreak? Elvis couldn't do it. In 1961, as Elvis was making his transition from rock and roll rebel to mainstream entertainer, a song called Mother's Wedding Day was brought to his attention. The ballad told the story of a mother attending her son's wedding, while remembering her own wedding day and subsequent heartbreak when her husband abandoned her. The song was a thinly veiled reference to Elvis's own family history. His father Vernon had been briefly imprisoned when Elvis was a child, creating a period of hardship for Elvis and his mother Gladys. Though Vernon returned to the family, the experience had deeply affected Gladys. Red West, a member of Elvis's entourage, later recounted that Elvis read through the lyrics and immediately rejected the song. "Nobody needs to be singing about my mama's private feelings," Elvis reportedly said. "Some things aren't meant for records." This rejection came during a period when Elvis was still deeply affected by his mother's death in 1958. Gladys had passed away just as Elvis's career was reaching stratospheric heights and just before his induction into the Army. The loss devastated him, and those close to Elvis noted that he never fully recovered from her death. The Donghair, whose identity has been debated by Elvis historians, had apparently researched the Presley family history and crafted the song as a tear-jerker that would showcase Elvis's emotional delivery. Instead, it struck too close to his personal grief. Though Elvis recorded numerous songs about mothers throughout his career, including Mama Liked the Roses and covers of Baby What You Want Me to Do, he consistently avoided material that explicitly referenced his own mother's struggles. Mother's Wedding Day remains an interesting footnote in Elvis history, a rare example of material considered too personal and painful even for an artist known for emotional performances. Number 4. The Golden Wedding Ring. Can a song be too schmaltzy even for Las Vegas-era Elvis? In 1972, as the King was regularly performing his high-energy shows at the International Hotel in Las Vegas, a songwriting team pitched him the Golden Wedding Ring. The ballad chronicled 50 years of marriage between high school sweethearts, from their wedding day through raising children, hardship, and eventually celebrating their golden anniversary surrounded by grandchildren. Elvis, who by this point had separated from his wife Priscilla and was dealing with the reality of limited time with his daughter Lisa Marie, found the song's rosy view of lifelong marriage difficult to embrace. According to Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager and close friend, Elvis listened to the demo once during a late-night session in his suite at the International Hotel. He just shook his head and said, "Who are they kidding? Nobody's that happy for 50 years straight," Esposito recalled in his memoir. What made this rejection particularly interesting was that Elvis was not opposed to recording sentimental material during this period of his career. This was, after all, the era that gave fans emotional performances like Always on My Mind and Separate Ways, songs that dealt with relationship struggles and regrets. But the Golden Wedding Ring presented an idealized view of marriage that contrasted sharply with Elvis's own experience. The song was eventually recorded by country artist Tammy Wynette in 1974 and became a moderate hit on country radio stations. Elvis, meanwhile, continued to select material that reflected a more complex, often bittersweet view of relationships. His song choices increasingly reflected his personal struggles, as evidenced by late career performances of Hurt and My Way songs that spoke to disappointment and resilience rather than fairy tale endings. Industry insiders noted that Elvis's song selection became increasingly personal in his later years, with the king gravitating toward material that resonated with his own experiences rather than generic sentimentality. The Golden Wedding Ring, with its untroubled portrait of marital bliss, simply didn't ring true for a man whose personal life had become complicated and often painful. Number 3. Daddy's Christmas Letter. Would you record a Christmas song that made grown men cry? Elvis wouldn't. In 1965, during a period when Elvis was churning out formulaic movies with accompanying soundtracks, he was presented with a holiday song called Daddy's Christmas Letter. The tear-jerker told the story of a father writing a Christmas letter to his children from heaven, describing how he watches over them and their mother during the holiday season. The song's maudlin approach to grief and loss was designed to capitalize on the success of melodramatic recitation songs like Please, Daddy, Don't Get Drunk This Christmas-y, that were popular during the era. It came complete with a spoken word bridge over gentle piano accompaniment. According to Billy Smith, Elvis's cousin, who was often present during recording discussions, Elvis turned down the song immediately. Elvis just said, "That's not a Christmas song, that's a funeral." Smith recalled in an interview for an Elvis fan magazine in the 1990s. He thought it would upset kids more than comfort them. This rejection is particularly noteworthy because Elvis did record his share of sentimental Christmas material. His rendition of Blue Christmas remains a holiday standard, and his Christmas albums included emotional songs like If Every Day Was Like Christmas. However, Daddy's Christmas Letter apparently crossed a line into exploitation of grief that made Elvis uncomfortable. The song's writer, Harold Robbins, no relation to the novelist, later found success with similar material recorded by Bobby Goldsboro and other artists specializing in emotional narratives. Elvis, meanwhile, maintained a certain standard even during his movie years, a period often criticized for his recording mostly lightweight commercial material. Elvis's Christmas recordings, while sometimes sentimental, generally maintained an atmosphere of celebration or romantic longing rather than delving into tragedy. His instinctive rejection of Daddy's Christmas Letter suggests that, even during his least critically acclaimed period, Elvis maintained some boundaries around emotional authenticity in his music. Number 2. Little Angel's Prayer. Can a lullaby be too sweet even for Elvis? In 1958, shortly after Elvis entered the Army, his record label was searching for material that could be released during his military service to maintain his presence on the charts. Among the songs considered was Little Angel's Prayer, a lullaby ostensibly sung by a father to his child, but actually a thinly disguised religious song about guardian angels watching over sleeping children. Before his induction, Elvis had recorded several songs in advance, but when Little Angel's Prayer was suggested via mail communication with his management, Elvis reportedly wrote back with a simple rejection. "This sounds like something for Tennessee Ernie Ford, not me." The song featured lyrics like, "Close your eyes, my little angel. Heaven's watching from above, sending down a host of angels, guarding you with tender love." It was written by Sid Tepper and Roy C. Bennett, who had successfully placed several songs with Elvis for his films, including G.I. Blues and Puppet on a String. What made this rejection interesting was that Elvis was no stranger to religious material. He had grown up in the Pentecostal church and would later record gospel albums like His Hand in Mine that took his spiritual side. but Little Angel's Prayer apparently struck him as crossing the line from sincere to saccharine. According to Ernst Jorgensen, the respected Elvis historian and archival producer, Elvis maintained approval rights over his material even during his army service, and was particularly concerned about maintaining his authenticity during his absence from the music scene. He was worried about being portrayed as too soft while he was serving. Jorgensen noted in his book, Dumping in Elvis's Recording Sessions. The song was eventually recorded by Pat Boone, whose family-friendly image was better suited to its gentle religious sentimentality. Elvis, meanwhile, returned from the army in 1960 with harder-edged material like Such a Night and It's Now or Never, suggesting his instincts about maintaining his edge had been correct. Number 1. Memories of Mama's Roses. Did Elvis have a line he wouldn't cross when it came to songs about his mother? The most famous rejection in Elvis's catalog occurred in 1970, during the productive period following his 1968 comeback special. Elvis was riding high on the success of In the Ghetto and Suspicious Minds when renowned jockeyard Dolores Fuller presented him with Memories of Mama's Roses. Fuller had a proven track record, having co-written songs for Elvis's films including Rockashula Baby and Blue Hawaii. Her new ballad was crafted specifically with Elvis in mind, drawing on the well-known close relationship he had with his mother Gladys, who had passed away in 1958. The song described a man visiting his childhood home after his mother's death and finding her rose garden still in bloom, triggering memories of her love and wisdom. The chorus featured lines about her hands that worked so hard and eyes that shined with love. According to several accounts, including one from Elvis's backup singer, Kathy Westmoreland, Elvis listened to the demo tape in his dressing room at the International Hotel in Las Vegas, where he was performing his landmark engagement. As the song played, Elvis reportedly became visibly emotional. When it finished, he quietly said, "I can't sing this one. It's beautiful, but I just can't do it." What made this rejection particularly significant was that Elvis rarely discussed his mother's death openly, though those close to him knew he remained deeply affected by it. Marty Lacker, one of Elvis's inner circle, known as the Memphis Mafia, later said, Elvis would sing songs about mothers in general, but nothing that directly made him think about his own mother's death. It was still too painful, even all those years later. Fuller was understanding about the rejection, later telling an interviewer, "I thought it might help him process his grief, but I realized afterward it was presumptuous to think a song could heal that kind of wound." Instead of recording Memories of Mama's Roses, Elvis channeled his emotions into gospel recordings and more generalized songs about love and loss. His 1970s albums included emotionally powerful performances, but he consistently avoided material that explicitly referenced his personal grief over his mother. The song was never recorded by another major artist, as Fuller considered it written specifically for Elvis and chose not to shop it elsewhere. The demo recording remains in private collections, occasionally surfacing at Elvis memorabilia auction as a piece of the King's untold musical history. Did Elvis know himself better than the songwriters who tried to capture his emotions? And in refusing these 7 songs, did he perhaps reveal more about himself than if he had recorded them